Hi everyone, welcome back, guys. We're going to do a nice, hopefully quick review of the match against Wolves. And, it was a good result. We got a nice 2-0, which, something we probably wasn't all expecting. We all say it would be a win, probably through gritted teeth more than anything, but we said it would be a win. So I think probably before we kind of kick off, I guess the best place to start is with the lineups. So, there were some aspects of the lineup that we all agreed with when we did our show the other day about who should be in our top 11. One of the conversations we had was Kehrer at right back, which obviously ultimately was one of the ones we said maybe won't happen. But, when we look at the lineups for the game, it was pretty much kind of as you would expect. Obviously, Dawson came in really for Soufal, with obviously Kehrer going in at right back. The midfield duo, much maligned midfield duo, continued as it was. Obviously, Bowen, also another player that we were talking around as to obviously being in bad form. Again, another one that actually managed to stay in the squad. And it was good to see Cornet and Scamacca start. Obviously, it was a bit of a surprise when we saw Wolves line up in that Ruben Neves was playing as part of the back three, but also quite a sensible choice if you're looking to play out the back and you don't have necessarily a natural centre-back. It's a good kind of player to put in there, protected by two experienced and good full centre-back. So, obviously, we kicked off the game. We played quite well in some patches. Obviously, Wolves did quite well in possession for a large percentage, but ultimately we got the win. So kind of one of the things that I thought was a bit of a standout was really the Scamacca and Bowen pairing. What do you guys feel about that?
Well, I know we kind of talked about when Scamacca came in, we said that this was going to be one of the things that could really, really excel. Just because he's very similar to Raspadori in the way that he plays. I know I'll probably get football Twitter, going, no, he's not. But
I'd have probably gone for Berardi myself, but yeah, I can see where you're coming from again with Raspadori as well.
But that same very direct workhorse style. And we said it's not that Bowen hasn't been working. It's just that he's been hit or miss with it. And I think having Scamacca who would find his runs was perfect. There's a real vision there from both players to find each other, but create each other space. And I think we could really be looking at a partnership that creates a lot of chances for us. Obviously, the first goal kind of came through that Scamacca's brilliant strike, but it wasn't a direct. It wasn't a direct assist from Bowen, but without the twos link up play, it wouldn't have happened. And I think Scamacca's following up of play and just being there on the edge of the box to collect it is something that we've really missed from Antonio, which I'll kind of touch on later, how he didn't impress me when he came on. But I think if we're talking purely kind of positives to take away, to have that in your first few games together is such a positive start and something to build on.
Yeah. So what do you feel, Frankie? I thought that particularly when Scamacca got the ball, he was able to exploit the fact that Aït-Nouri was really going forward and consistently looked for Bowen. I think it also helped that Neves seemed to gravitate more to the right hand side of Wolves, and therefore obviously meant that he kept getting a one-on-one. I think against Kilman was playing on the left hand side for Bowen. So how do you feel that kind of went? I know we all had that conversation. You were very happy after the game, so you can probably share what was happening after the game and how you felt.
Yeah, I'll start with Scamacca. I thought he was really, really good, and it helped with how Wolves were playing. They played with that back three with Neves, and a lot of the time Neves was trying to kind of come into the midfield, and what was actually happening was when we were kind of turning over play, there was a big gap which Scamacca was then occupying, and it left so much space for Bowen to then run into and behind. And those two, especially in the first half, were absolutely brilliant. And that is why I said about Bowen in our best XI, because I just knew that the player was still there. It's just a matter of showing it. And, you know, fair enough, he hasn't. And I guess one of those reasons, we can't just say it's purely down to other people. He's got to look at himself as well. But having Scamacca in there in comparison to Antonio has been such a massive difference. And, you know, we saw it against Wolves, how much space Scamacca occupies and how much attention he actually draws. And then you're almost giving Bowen a free license to just make those runs in behind, and you don't need to rely on, you know, Bowen's technical ability, which isn't his strong point. And then, you know, you're making those runs in behind, and that's how you can kind of hurt teams. And yeah, I thought Scamacca was really good. And surprisingly, we'll probably get onto Souček a bit more, but I thought he had a really, really good game, not just, you know, offensively, but actually defensively, which surprised me. But yeah, Scamacca and Bowen, really, really good.
Yeah. I think we saw a kind of like misunderstanding with Scamacca as well, especially in the first half. I checked my phone at half time and said, yeah, I saw quite a lot of people saying, yeah, he's got the goal, but he looks so lazy. And I was thinking, yeah, but he's got defenders drawn to him. Yeah. He's got players coming basically within a couple of yards of him. He's got them sat on him at all times. Yeah. And you're just ignoring the fact that he's occupying players, which creates the space for others. Yeah. And when we spoke about the difference between him and Haller, it really is kind of like night and day almost, because he will drop back and he will win a header, but he will also follow in the play, and he will do that with pace and use his size to absolutely bully players. And I'm a big fan of Kilman. I think he's a fantastic centre-back, but neither of the Wolves, any of the three of the Wolves centre-backs were able to really compete with Scamacca on any level. He bullied
absolutely. I think I find that interesting that people were saying he's lazy, yet with you obviously being at the game, you see a lot of when he goes to press, he is doing nothing, but he's very exaggerated with his arms. He's demanding the team comes up with him. If the ball goes minutely away from him, or if he misjudges it, he's so angry at himself. If people don't back him or come up with him, he will remonstrate. And I made a point on our Twitter account saying about how he led that line. Now, we've talked about the lack of leadership in our team. He actually led that front line. And Antonio does lead the front, but he doesn't do it like a leader would, in that he doesn't demand other players come up with him. He kind of plays, or he tries to drag the team forward through his play, but he doesn't also have that attitude that also demands that players actually push up with him and come to him. And also, we also made the point as well on our Twitter one that the way Scamacca plays, because he has that quick one-touch football, and because he will make those little kind of instinctive flicks and then go off himself, that he's actually putting responsibility on other players. Like Antonio takes a lot of responsibility himself, but Scamacca, whilst he will do that, also demands that other players take responsibility as well, because he'll put the ball into space with quick one-touches. And how did you think that link play went with him? Like, because obviously it was a completely different night and day, I felt, how attack looked when Scamacca was on and when obviously Antonio came on.
Yeah, I think with the biggest difference between the two when they're playing is Scamacca will play as a striker. You know, he will keep that central space. He will do that very well. When Antonio's, you know, getting the ball or making those runs or, you know, being a bit more progressive, he often tends to drift wide. And then that just leaves a massive space in the middle, which, you know, your striker should be doing. And you don't need Antonio to be, you know, he can be very good at it and very effective, but what you want from your striker is exactly that. You know, we've seen it with Haaland for Man City, not comparing their quality, but like, you don't need your striker to be doing those things if you have the other players, you know, the creative players involved. And it just makes no sense for Antonio to be doing that. So I think for now, that game is kind of a really big statement from Scamacca in terms of, you know, I want to be that number one striker for the Premier League. Got 60 minutes. And it looks like, you know, with Anderlecht on Thursday, I would really expect Antonio to start that and not Scamacca.
Yeah, I think that would be quite telling, wouldn't it? If Antonio starts, that is arguably saying Scamacca is starting against Fulham as well.
I think what really kind of disappointed me when Antonio came on was it it wasn't so much his lack of running, because he put himself about, but his decision making was really poor. He had 2 really good chances, which both times he had someone he could have just knocked it wide, easy passes, and given them basically a sitter, but he chose to cut back onto his left and have a shot. And I know we're desperate for goals, but when you're 2-0 up in a game and you miss one of those chances, the second time you would at least expect them to go, I'll give it to the man in space. But both times he just snatched at it, and he didn't. He did basically wasted 2 golden opportunities. And
we also had a bit of the Costa at the time as well, because even I think in between that we had Costa had a very, very good opportunity that he missed. Defending was pretty poor. The thing that I found funny was where Dawson then had to go at Souček for essentially moving back out into the midfield, where actually Dawson kind of switched off and didn't track over to Costa, or even actually make sure that Souček was covering that space. So I did find that quite funny that in the game Souček got the blame, but ultimately it wasn't his fault.
I think I do think a clean sheet really flattered us. And I said, I went with my dad and I said, as soon as he had that header, I said, that's our one. I said, if you give him another chance like that, he's going to score. Luckily, our defence kind of switched on a bit, but I was really impressed with Atnuri, and I thought he ran. I thought he was a real danger up and down that left-hand side for them. But Kara was a little bit shaky in the first 20. He's a couple of rash challenges, but just bullied him out of the game after that.
I think there was one challenge where he almost gave away a penalty. That Kara, I don't know if you guys remember, he kind of just dove straight in. And I was like, just calm down.
He went in very quickly, yeah. But obviously, another player that we, and as a fan base, we've all been very critical of recently, and to be honest, it has been much deserved. But what a day for the man to stand up. He was pretty colossal in that midfield. He wasn't really involved in that attacking side, so to speak, as much. But what he did do, actually, he made some great overlaps or underlaps even for Bowen to pass into, and put in a couple of beautiful crosses. The one in particular that Cornet skied was a superb run and then cross. Obviously, defensively, he was brilliant in that second half. Rice had a good game, but I was just watching Souček with the defending side, and it just absolutely outshone Rice, I think, defensively. I don't even think that's unfair to say. Rice had a good game, but Souček was phenomenal defensively. And in a large part of why we managed to get that game as a clean sheet, I think we can put down to Souček. But, what do you guys think about the performance? How did you rate it?
Yeah, no, I think this is quite a telling story. So I couldn't actually go to the game. I was watching with a couple of Arsenal fans and Liverpool fans, and I said about Thomas Souček, I was like, I'll give you, X amount of money if he plays a forward pass in this game. And as soon as I said it, within about 10 seconds, he played a really nice forward pass. I was like, okay, he's going to have a good game here. And in the second half, especially his defensive side, more so, was just really impressive. Everyone was I did see on Twitter after the game about Rice having a really good game. I didn't think he was that good, to be honest. Maybe that was because Souček kind of outshone him, like you said. And, Rice last 20, 25 minutes, that's when we saw the best of him. But Souček throughout, especially the first half, even, making those runs, that he's used to doing down that right-hand side, linking up nicely. And then defensively in the second half, making tackles, making interceptions, and being a very different player to what we've seen in recent weeks. And I was really, really happy for him that he showed a few people that, including myself, that he's still got maybe something to offer in this team.
He was so solid in that second half defensively. One of the things that really stands out for me when we're talking about defenders is the ability to shepherd players where you want them to go. And when you're a defensive player and you have that large frame, it's a lot easier to kind of do it, but it's also a lot easier to be made to look stupid if someone just puts a little nutmeg. And Nuri tried that a couple of times with him, and he was just, easily shrugged off, or he tried to cut inside. Souček could just go shoulder to shoulder for a 50-50 and then just move it away from him.
Yeah.
He was colossal at the back, particularly in the second half. I think my dad and I both groaned, I think about 5 minutes in when he played.
I know the moment exactly you're thinking of.
He tried
to play it to corner and it needed to be lifted, but he hit it along the floor, and then obviously whoever's playing right wing back, his name's escaped me, just cut it out. But there was a period as well in the first half, where he was fouled about 3 times in the corner, which the ref gave nothing to until the third one. It was like,
yes,
half.
Well,
we didn't get much, but he got fouled, and there was, if you've seen it on the club site, he was talking about essentially that sequence where he just like, I was done. I was absolutely shattered, could hardly breathe at that point because he'd done obviously so much work. And another thing that he said was around basically alluding to that there's obviously a feeling that that team combativeness that we had last year was coming back, is that if one missed a challenge, the next one was there. If someone was out of position, someone else was in the position in which to essentially recover. And I think he was a key part of that. I think he undersold himself. I think he was a very big key part of that in the game on Saturday.
I think a lot of the players on the pitch, they knew what they had to do. And I think hopefully we also saw Paqueta really really show people what he's about, as opposed to what the team sheet would suggest when he plays in that diamond, what that would perhaps suggest to a lot of people. But the physicality we saw, we've not seen all season. We've not seen players shake that off. And let's face it, Paul Tierney had an awful game refereeing. He was abysmal. Like, he just let every foul that was blatantly obvious. Like, my dad's used to referee. He was going, what? Like, normally he quite likes to defend the referee or say, there's a bit of doubt there. But he was just going, what the hell is? And even he was chanting the referee.
We got not fit to referee. We'll do the PC version that went around the ground at one point.
Bad man. He's not a very nice man, but he was woeful, and I think the only negative I'm really going to kind of hammer home is that our set pieces were abysmal. No, I know. Scamacca gets off a little bit scot-free, and I won't be too mean about his. I'm going to call it a sniper attack on one of the fans, because it was not a shot at goal.
I think it's fair to say he was overzealous on that shot.
Yeah, that was a conversion, if anything. But
Ted Lasso 3 points. That's what that was.
But that was the only negative I can think of in terms of our set pieces were really poor, and we were lucky we didn't have to rely on them because we weren't getting anything from the referee. So
I think it was just that game was just about winning the match. It wasn't about, a lot has been said about we need to kind of transition into a more possession-based dominant team. We've seen, the counter of that, which is Wolves, the exact same precedent as us. They were very much a counter-attacking team in the early days. And Bruno Lage is trying to transform into that back four, and it hasn't worked out for him. And there are similarities. Exactly. So there's kind of similarities in that kind of transition in what we're going through. And it's important to be careful. And I think David Moyes kind of understood that in this game. He knew we wouldn't perhaps dominate the ball with some of the Wolves midfielders that were playing, and it was just about getting the win. We saw a lot more physicality, like you said, and Paqueta was one that probably went a bit under the radar in terms of that, because he was doing a lot of defensive work and, putting in a big shift. And that actually probably helped Souček, having someone in front of him like that, instead of, maybe a Fornals who will work hard, or, a Lanzini who's, technically gifted, but won't do that side of the game, which, maybe helped out Souček as well.
Yeah. So obviously, some other takeaways for the game that I personally felt, obviously, I'll mention Paqueta as well, and we'll talk about it.
Can we talk about Bowen's goal first?
We'll talk about that in a minute. Because we'll talk about that in a minute, because obviously one of the players we're going to reference it was part of that Bowen goal. But obviously, when we talk about Paqueta, some people are still saying I don't really see what he's offering, but when you watch the game, or if you actually just watch what he was doing, as you say, he may be a Brazilian player, but he's not a luxury player. He isn't afraid to get involved in that gritty elements. He doesn't mind looking sloppy in the sense of getting into those niggly moments of just trying to nick the ball or trying to just throw his body in the way to try and divert the ball away. Again, he made some very good 1-2 touch passes, which also helped us break the press, which kind of went quite unnoticed. If you look at what was on kind of the timeline, there's a lot of, well, he didn't really do much in possession, but in actual fact, when he got the ball, he tended to be a bit quick with it, which encouraged then Boeing to do the same. Obviously, Fornals was quite in his element when that, because of Paqueta. It also meant that Scamacca was always in space because people trying to press Paqueta. They were trying to press those kind of players and stop them playing, and it obviously generated space. The other thing, obviously, one of the other takeaways for me was a lot of was being made about our central defence being a problem, but for me, I think what has been a bigger issue has been our fullback position. And unfortunately for Soufal, he's really struggled this year. And Dawson coming in, fortunately, meant we had a pairing. I do think he made a mistake on the Diego Costa one. I think that was quite a glaring mistake, but he did quite well. There's 3 incidents with Adama Traore where Dawson was superb. So that's the only blemish really, is that the Costa moment for Dawson's performance. But moving Kehrer to right back seemed to work really well. Obviously, he didn't get forward very much, but a couple of times he did. He put Bowen through a couple of times. Also, his shot then led to Bowen's goal. So I think a lot of the problems with our defence was also what was sitting in front of it, which was rectified because Souček had a great game, but also our fullback position, especially in the right-hand side, was really let us down. Obviously, we all know that I'm not a massive fan of Cresswell, but he has done well this season. I give him his due that he has done actually quite well. Still would prefer to see Emerson. I think it gives us better attacking quality. But again, Cresswell, give him his due, he's done quite well. And I think the Souček change, the Soufal change was the right one. But, guys, what kind of your takeaways as well from the game? And obviously, I know you're dying to talk about the Bowen goal, Frankie, so go ahead.
I'll hold that off a little bit longer. But yeah, I think one of the highlights when Emerson came on was we seemed to keep the ball a lot better, but also we created those chances for Antonio. And when we moved to that back 5, we did look quite comfortable, which was good to see. In terms of Paqueta, I thought he was great, and I think there's a real kind of I think he played the role that people seem to think Lanzini played, in terms of he played the centre midfield role really, really well, and I don't quite understand what game people were watching who didn't see just how influential he was, because there was a passage right after Fornals came on for Cornet, who, let's hope it's not a serious injury. He did go down and he stayed down for quite a while.
I think Moy says he wasn't particularly good, so I don't think it's a great one. So he could be out for a month or two, which would essentially mean he's out until the new year because of the World Cup, obviously.
Yeah, which fingers crossed. Let's hope he's not. But I think Paqueta's link-up play with Fornals was excellent. It's 2 very technically gifted players, and their little one-touch passing created so much space. And that's part of the reason that I kind of wanted Souček to be dropped, because I wanted to see a bit more of that in the centre. But you have to hold your hands up and say, you know what, that was completely counteracted today. Yeah. And Souček had a great game. Player who I think, again, really kind of, I have to hold my hands up and say, got it wrong. And Frankie will be wonderfully led in by this.
I think I probably would just add to that, though. So I think with Paqueta playing, it allowed Souček as well to do those runs where he was doing those underlapping runs and actually supporting the attack, because it meant that we always had a very secure 2, because Rice and Paqueta would do the sit, or, one would just sit a little bit higher, but then you always had that one that could go forward. So it was, Paqueta didn't play at 10. He actually played at 8, as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, let's just say he done everything that people think Lanzini, or what they tend to say Lanzini does. He took ball under pressure with his back to goal and held the ball, laid it off. He made simple passes that, if it was Lanzini, would be talked about as look how good he is at holding possession, retaining possession, because it's a 60 million pound Brazilian who's meant to be a number 10 as well. It's why is he not doing rainbow flicks and nutmegging the mermaid every 5 seconds? Which is, we have to understand that he will do that at some point, but he's also going to do very simple things. He's not like that total maverick that I think some people were maybe expecting as a player. And he does have a lot of grit about him.
I mean, Rice said it in his post-match interview. He said, he ideally, Paqueta will have the freedom to play and, will provide the other parts, which will let him, take up those positions more maybe as a 10. But yeah, I think from, the first 10, 15 minutes, it was actually Souček probably playing higher than Paqueta a lot of the time. And especially from when we were kind of set out in our defensive shape, Souček was really high in comparison to what we're probably used to him seeing. But yeah, I think that creative side will come, in games like those where we must win and we have to be a bit more physical and a bit more resilient. You're going to see that side of him, which is a positive. Take it as a positive that he can do that if needed. And, hopefully in, a week's time when we play Fulham, he will have a bit more license to be a bit more creative, maybe with our confidence back up now. And, we'll see a bit more of the creativity that people probably want to see from a 50 million pound Brazilian, international. But yeah, I think don't underestimate what he did, because that is just another positive factor of what he can bring.
So go on, Frankie. Talk about the Bowen goal.
Yes.
We know you've been dying to do it all weekend. So go ahead. Talk about the Bowen goal.
Well, let me set the scene. Souček actually played a beautiful flick. I don't know if you saw that, but Souček played a beautiful first time flick around the corner, outside of the foot to Kehrer, and he drove in, took the shot, deflected to Bowen, took a really, really nice touch inside, another touch with his head or his chest, and just that typical Bowen finish that we've seen, and that instinct, which he said in interviews and on podcasts where I think it was Kevin Nolan that taught him, don't actually look at the goal. Just shoot. You should be able to know where the goal is. You don't need to take that glance. And we saw that, that instinct of shooting, and he knew exactly where he needed to put it. And it was a really fantastic goal. And I was really happy for him because he played really well up to that point as well. And it's important for him to get underway for this season. I think it was similar last season, around game week 8 that he got his first Prem goal. So fingers crossed we're going to see, a flurry of goals now up until November, when hopefully he'll get picked for England for the World Cup. But yeah, really good goal and couldn't be more happy.
Yeah, so obviously we're going to keep this one short today. So we're probably going to wrap up there this time. We're actually going to keep to a time and do 30 minutes only. But I know I'm going to be hard. But, it was a great result for us. We needed the win, obviously. We discussed what we thought would be our top 11, and some of that 11 actually was done in the way that we hoped. I think we still may see some changes, but it was a great win when we needed it. It sets us up perfectly for Anderlecht in the week, as well as then obviously Fulham. So, fair play to Moyes. He got it right. We rode our luck a little bit, but, you're always going to in the Premier League, I think. I don't think you're ever going to dominate unless you're Man City. And even they dominated the game and still conceded 3. But it's a result we needed at exactly the right time. And if we can get the same result against Fulham, then obviously the previous concerns start to move away and we can start to think a lot more positively, and hopefully then see more of the likes of obviously Paqueta in a more flamboyant Brazilian-esque performance, kind of orientated role. But yeah, again, Scamacca was great. We all called for Scamacca to be in the team. He was fantastic. He also got named man of the match. Can't say I'm exactly surprised at all. But 3 points, lads. Moving up the table. I think we're now in 15th, which is, it's nothing to shout about. But we're out of the relegation zone, and obviously our win also put Bruno Lage out of a job. So. Yeah, pretty big result, really, when you kind of look at it in those kind of contexts. But I'm happy with the result, happy for Bowen to get himself back up there, happy for Scamacca, and even more so, it's taken a little bit of pressure off of Moyes when he needed the pressure to be off. So, yeah, let's say, I think that's it, guys. I think that's the last of this episode. We'll be back in the week, possibly to kind of talk up the Anderlecht game, or even a review of the Anderlecht game. But until then, there's only one more thing to do, guys, and that's
come on your Islands.